Welcome to Real Talk Realtors, the podcast where we dive deep into the world of real estate with a mission to empower and educate realtors like you to build thriving businesses rooted in integrity and community. I'm Laura.
And I'm Amanda. We are two seasoned real estate agents in the Dallas-Fort Worth market. Together, we are dedicated to elevating the real estate industry, making a real positive impact on our communities. Get ready for candid discussions, expert interviews, and a healthy dose of inspiration.
Hey guys! Okay, so Amanda and I just recorded this great podcast on buyer representation and the value we bring and all the things. And it is such a great episode. Cannot wait for you to dive in. But we ended up talking for close to an hour.
Yeah.
It's a little long.
Great stuff. Great information.
So we decided it would be a good opportunity to turn this into a two-part series. So we are going to break this episode up into two separate episodes. So we are going to just switch over to the recording and let you listen, but it is going to cut off in the middle, and then we will come back in 2 weeks with the second part of that and finish it out. But you're not going to want to miss both parts. Really great information.
Lots of really good information, especially with everything that has come out with the NAR lawsuit and buyer agency moving forward.
Yep, bringing that value.
Yes.
Value.
Yes.
So here we go. Episode 9 of Real Talk Realtors.
All right.
Enjoy. Hey, Amanda.
Hey, Laura.
How's it going?
Great.
Good.
I'm excited for this week, and I'm very excited for this topic.
This is a topic that we have all been talking about for the last couple of months.
Yes.
If you are a realtor, you are probably tired of hearing the words NAR and settlement in the same sentence, but
Very much.
it is something that's happening in our industry. It is making changes, and we have to talk about it. So today we are going to bring up the topic of buyer representation specifically. So as a buyer's agent, how do we bring value to our clients? And so this is what I feel like I keep hearing over and over and over again. Anytime anyone in the industry is talking about the changes that are coming and how it's going to affect us, is you have to start showing your value.
Yes.
Show your value. Show your value.
Yeah, what is your value proposition? What do you do? What do you bring to the table?
Yes. And so for a while, like probably the first couple of weeks, this really, I don't want to say bothered me, but it kind of got me, because as I dove deeper into this, I'm realizing the way that it's been in the past, it's been super simple to tell a buyer, hey, you don't have to pay for my service, so you might as well use me.
Yep.
Which hasn't even necessarily been true. They are, in a way, paying for your service in the price of the home or whatever it is. It's always been that way, but it's been the way in the past that we've articulated why they should use us, and it's just kind of been like, well, it's a no-brainer.
It doesn't cost you anything.
It doesn't cost you anything. You might as well have me around.
Yep.
And now we're being challenged to really lay out there the reason that a buyer should use you, even if they have to pay out of pocket for your service. And I've always known that we bring a lot of value to buyers in a transaction.
We do.
But being able to articulate it.
That is the hard part, because it's like, okay, well, what do I do?
Yeah.
You know?
It's been on autopilot for so long that we're now having to retrain our brains to think in a different way. We're having to reform our processes.
Yes.
We're having to do things in a different way, and that's okay. Change is not always bad.
Yes, exactly. And this is one of the best things that actually could have come out of this NAR settlement.
Absolutely.
Is because it is really going to up the professionalism as realtors.
100%.
So it's really going to this is no longer going to be like, oh, just use me because. It's like, no, you need me. So this is why I can help you. And this is why you want somebody representing you.
Yes.
You know, so it's super important.
1,000%. So today's episode might end up being a little bit longer than a normal episode, because Amanda and I kind of prepped separately for this. I wanted to keep it separate for a couple of reasons. And the biggest one being, we cannot do blanket statements anymore. It's a big part of this settlement, and part of the problem was the cookie cutter things that were happening. And so when we talk about finding our value, know that it's going to be different for every person. Every agent is going to bring different things to the table.
Yep, exactly.
And so I wanted us to kind of think through that separately. And what ended up happening, which is kind of cool, I kind of brought the position of, at a buyer meeting, how can we verbalize and articulate our value in a pretty simple, maybe clear-cut way. And Amanda really brought in like her process and how us as realtors can bring value to our clients.
Yes.
And so we're going to talk about both of those things. So we're going to talk about the buyer meeting, and we're going to talk about the process as a buyer's agent, kind of from start to finish, and the different ways that we bring value.
Yeah, I'm excited.
So it'll be good. Okay, so for me, the things that I wrote down, what's funny is I said I kind of struggled at first with like really putting down pen to paper on the value that we bring. But once I started, I had to kind of like, okay, this episode's going to be way too long. I've got to really narrow this down. So I kind of narrowed it down to my 5 top things that I really feel like value-wise we bring to the table, and they're things that we can talk about to a client.
Yes.
So the first one is home buyer education. So I kind of thought through this I tried to think through each thing as if I were a buyer. Somebody's talking to me and they're telling me the reasons that I should pay them to help me through a transaction. And as a buyer that maybe I've bought a home or two before in the past, I might think like, yeah, but I can always just YouTube or TikTok video my way through this. Like, we're in a digital age.
And I'm guilty of that.
We're in a digital age. We are. And you know what? You could maybe fumble your way through a transaction. That way you can Google things that come up and just hope that the answers that you're getting.
But I will tell you, being involved in a lawsuit where the buyer thinks that they can represent themselves and they think that they know what they know, and coming out, they have no clue. They have no clue what the contract is. Yep. And so they have no 2 feet to stand on.
Yep.
And so it is so important that you have somebody who knows the ins and outs of this contract.
100%. So the education and experience that a realtor has will always surpass anything you can find on the internet. Because even if I were to make videos for TikTok on a real estate transaction, there's not a chance that I would be able to fully get everything out of my brain into a video for somebody to consume and then be able to do this. It's all about experience and repetition.
Well, and no 2 transactions are the same.
Yes.
Every single transaction is different, has different terms, different components, and so every single transaction is going to be different.
Yep. And not only that, depending on where you're located, every state has different laws and regulations and contracts and rules and ways that they do business and what's normal and not normal. So if you're watching a realtor on TikTok that's in Florida and you're in Texas,
and they're saying, you do this, this, and this. Well, in Texas, you can't do this, this, and this. We don't have those. We don't do the escalation clause.
Yeah, it's illegal here. There are many things like that where you can really get yourself in trouble by going off of a random person on social media. And even like some of the realtor groups that I'm in that have realtors across the nation, like people get into arguments in the comments over what's the best practice. And we come to find out, well, best practice in Tennessee is different than California. Like, it's just different. So having a local expert that knows your contract, your laws, your regulations, and being able to help you through that is super important. I always do an initial meeting with my buyers, and I try to sit them down, and this is the value that I bring.
Yes.
I sit down and I walk them through the process. Okay, we're going high level. This is what you can expect every step along the way. And so really giving them that education and that insight on this is how this works really helps them feel comfortable, break down some walls. Whenever you know what to expect and what's coming next, you can take it a little easier. But again, I would not be able to prepare somebody at a buyer meeting in a 1 hour window for every situation that could possibly come up in a contract.
No way.
So that's where a lot of my value comes in, is the fact that, yeah, sure, Mr. Buyer, you've maybe bought 1, 2, or 3 homes in the past, but over my 7 years in real estate, I've had my hand on over 100 transactions. That's 100 different things that have happened, things that have come up, things I have experience with. I can anticipate things happening.
Yes.
I can see things coming a mile ahead. And they're things that you'll probably never know about, because I'm not going to bring it up to you.
Right, because we don't want our clients to stress about the things that are happening behind the scenes.
Yep.
That's our job, to take care of these fires and put them out and make sure that things are running seamlessly and smoothly for the whole process. We don't want the clients to know, oh, the appraisal came in low. Okay, well, shoot, I'm going to put together these comps. I'm going to put together this packet for the adjuster. I'm going to reach out to the adjuster. I'm going to reach out to the listing agent,
the lender,
to see what comps she used, what upgrades they use. Let me get a list of any upgrades, any receipts, and put these together to give to the appraiser, so that way they can reevaluate and be like, oh, I didn't realize that what happened. I didn't realize that, this house would be a better comp, you know, and so it's very important.
Presenting that in a way that an adjuster is going to accept it, because guys, guess what? The adjuster is human, and they have egos just like we do.
They don't ever like to admit that there's a mistake.
And that's what they have to do. If they change the value, they're admitting that the value they came up with was wrong and that you're right. Do you know how hard it is to get somebody to admit that they're wrong and you're right?
Yeah.
You got to do it in a really sensitive way. And so just knowing those things is super beneficial in a transaction.
Absolutely.
So low appraisal is a good example. A seller not completing repairs prior to closing.
This is a big one.
You go to that final walkthrough and the house is full of junk, or the repairs that you negotiated are not finished, or whatever. How are you going to handle that?
Yep.
How do you get through that? I've actually had a client call me before and say, hey, so I know we're closing tomorrow. We're in the middle of packing, but I accidentally backed the U-Haul up into the house. What do I do?
Oh, no.
He was freaking out. And I said, stay calm. Don't touch anything. I'll be right over. Needless to say, I worked all night on that, but we closed the next day and everybody was happy. It took a lot of phone calls to structural engineers that I had contacts for, contractors, multiple contractors coming out and giving bids, the other agent, me, all of the clients, like everybody working together to get that closed.
Yes.
But financing falling through the closing table.
Could you imagine if that would have happened? And as a buyer, what would you have known to have done if you didn't have an agent representing you?
Yeah, because I represented the seller, but she did a good job of making sure that like they had a contractor that they felt comfortable with, meet our contractor, and make sure everybody agrees, and like just things like that. She did a good job helping them, navigate that process and helping them feel comfortable moving forward. But financing falling through at the closing table.
Oh,
have you ever had that happen?
There. I have.
Okay.
Yep.
Did you know what to do and who got the earnest money when that happened?
We did, yes.
Did you know if you should extend the contract or if you should just terminate?
Yeah, there's a point at time I was like, okay, we can get through this. We may have to extend a week or so, but then there's a point in time it's like, okay, this is not going to work. Like, let's cut our losses. Yep. Let's go.
Which a random buyer may not know that.
Yeah.
What about showing up to an inspection and all the utilities in the house are off and the seller refuses to turn them on?
Well, you know what they say. What was in the contract?
What was in the contract? What was in the contract,
Did you
Mr.
know
Buyer?
that the seller is responsible for having the utilities turned on when the inspection happens?
Well, and all the way through closing.
Yes.
They can't turn it because you got to have a final walkthrough as well. So it's actually in the contract that they have these utilities on.
And that's not even
closing.
something we negotiate. It is just
in the contract.
written in the contract.
Yep. So if it were me, I would make a list of 50, 75, 90, 100 things, whatever that can go wrong in a transaction that you've seen go wrong, things like that, those examples. And it might take you a while to come up with them all, but and show it to them, and not as a fear thing, not like a, hey, I'm going to scare you into using me. It's more of a, I know how to handle. If
something were to happen,
if one of these things were to happen, I know how to handle all 100 of these things. I know exactly what to do. Do you know exactly what to do?
Yeah.
And so that's a good value proposition of things can go wrong, and they will go wrong.
Absolutely.
What happens when it does? So having
Not
that
if,
list
but
ready.
when.
Yeah. So having that list ready, and just be sure to present it in a way where it's not like, here's all the things that could happen. It's more of like, hey, these things can happen, but don't worry because I know how to handle every single one of them. Yeah. I know what to do. Yeah. And so that's number one. The next one, and you had talked a little bit about this when we talked before we started recording, but whenever you work with me, you're not just working with me.
That's right. We have a team.
Mm-hmm.
And that is like one of the best things that as a solo agent you can have.
Mm-hmm. So it's not just me. I'm going to be the face. I will be your point of contact. I have a lot of experience. I have a lot of, transactions that I've done, but also I have my transaction coordinator, and she's actually a broker, and she has even more experience than I do. I have my broker. She has more experience than I do. I've got contacts at the title company, good relationships with people at the title company that I use. I know I can call Amy anytime, and she will answer any of my questions. Even at night. She's done it before.
Yep. The title attorney.
Yep. I have texted him multiple times. He does not charge me for that, which is great. Like having an attorney that I can ask questions to, a lender, inspectors, contractors. Yes. Like I have all of these people, and I have a list of people
that we've
worked
with, that we like, know, and trust. And then also, like you said, we have the list of names that we would not refer, because we've had those experiences. And so we know who to use and who not to use.
Yep. My stay away list and my definitely use list. So I have a vendor list, and not only that, also networking with other agents. Yes. There are certain agents that I get really excited to work with on the other side, and some that I know this is going to be a little more bumpy than usual.
That's a good way to put it.
But just knowing that up front and being able to really navigate through those. Number 3, I put negotiation skills.
This is going to be huge moving forward.
Here's my warning, though. Don't advertise it if you don't have it. This goes back to everybody's value is different. And maybe you're not great at negotiating. I would encourage you to take some classes, do some role playing, whatever, different things, and get better at it. But don't advertise it if you don't have it. But for me, I'm fairly good at negotiating, but I've read a lot of books.
Yes.
I've watched a lot of videos. I listened to podcasts on it. I'm trying to always, anything that says negotiation skills, I'm trying to add that to the things I'm consuming, but also role playing with people in the office and finding time to sit down and role play through those things. And also a lot of just experience with it, with the transactions that I've done. But my tangible thing that I would take away and use at a buyer meeting would be look through your contract, your local contract, and count every single time or way in that contract that there's a spot to negotiate. Any blank in the contract or thing that can be written in or changed, and then
negotiable.
Yep, and then through the contract, right? So if the appraisal comes in low, or inspections and repairs and whatever, make a list and come up with your here's my 25 different spots through this transaction that I will be negotiating terms or something in this deal on your behalf. And if they sit and look at it, they're going to be like, man, that's a lot of times that I could really mess this up or not get the best deal for myself.
Well, and you have to realize too, when you are going to negotiate, the buyer's agent needs to know what's important to the seller and what is non-negotiable for the buyer too, because we represent the buyer, and so we want the best deal for our client, but we also want to get them the contract.
Yeah, for sure. Yep. So that's a good point of also knowing hey, I've talked to the other side. These are the things that are super important to them. And if it's not super important to us, it's a really great way to negotiate. Hey, you can have these things, but these are the things that we want in return or whatever. Yes. And also know that just because somebody says it's a non-negotiable, it doesn't always actually mean it's a non-negotiable. Sometimes I always say everything's negotiable.
Yep.
Everything is negotiable.
I like that table. It's negotiable.
It is. Everything you see here is negotiable. We may not get it, but it's for sure negotiable.
If you bring the right price,
And I think a good question to ask yourself, too, when it comes to negotiation skills, a really big part of this is, do you have the confidence to step into those conversations. So it goes kind of back to that training and education.
It is.
If you know the contract well and you know what can be negotiated and why and all of the things, and you have that confidence, you can step into those conversations with the other agent and do a better job.
Yeah. So one way that really helped me kind of understand the contract is pretend you're teaching a class on it. So go through, read the contract, and pretend you're having to teach another agent this contract. And so teaching somebody is a great way to learn something.
Yes, it is. 100%. It's great. Okay, so number 4, I have showing homes.
Oh,
as a buyer's agent.
One of my favorite things.
Yeah, as a buyer's agent, that's one of the biggest things up front that we do is going out and showing property. So when I thought of this from a perspective of maybe I'm a buyer that's undecided on if I need a realtor, I might be thinking like, I'll just go look at open houses, or I'll just call the listing agent and have the listing agent show me the house. Wouldn't that be simple? So some of the things to combat that would be...
Maybe I could save some money doing it that way too.
Oh, maybe you could. Maybe you could save a little money or spend a lot in legal fees. Okay.
You decide.
Do you know, I would say to them, do you know what specific questions to ask somebody if you're going to go to an open house or you're going to talk to the listing agent? Because surprise, surprise, the listing agent represents the seller, not you. So if you're not very specific in the questions that you ask about the property, they are not going to willingly give you information.
Right, because they are there to represent the seller, not you.
And protect the seller. So what questions do you ask? What do you look for when you're walking through a home other than the layout and the way it makes you feel? Because my job while you're walking around getting all ooey gooey over the house is to look for all the red flags.
Yep. And anything that's going to cost you money.
Yes. And being, again, somebody that's done hundreds of transactions, I've been to just as many inspections. I have learned a lot about home maintenance and things to look for.
Yes.
And the reason that this is important up front is because you don't want to waste the money on your option and inspection and appraisal and all the things if you're just going to walk away during an inspection. So if we can find some of those red flags up front,
it's a great time to talk to your clients about, hey, there's, a crack on the wall. Hey, look under the cabinets. There's been a leak. If you see things that are not well taken care of, it's kind of a red flag.
Yeah. And being able to know the difference between like a tape line crack versus a 45-degree in the corner of it problem. That might be a foundation issue. So there's things that we're looking for as we walk through a house that a buyer's not really even going to notice.
Right, because they just have kind of tunnel vision. It's like, oh my gosh, this is the one. We love it.
Yep.
But they don't go back and see all the things.
Not until you move in and you're 3 weeks in and then you're mad.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Didn't even see that.
I didn't notice that.
Okay, so you're in the house, you love it, you want to make an offer. How do you know it's priced appropriately? If you're a buyer that's unrepresented.
Zillow.
Oh, wow. That's risky. But yeah, I mean, that's probably what they're using, which those estimates they're not always accurate or even close sometimes. Here's the thing. Just because a home is listed at a certain price doesn't mean that's what it's worth.
Absolutely.
I could list my home tomorrow for $5 million.
Yep.
People would know it's not worth that very quickly.
Well, I don't know. The way Tad has things appraised now.
It's true. Tax bills just came in. I think the county thinks my home's worth $5 million. But if I were to list it 10, 20, 30,000 over value, would you notice that quickly then? Probably not.
No, but unless whatever the Zillow's estimate says.
Whatever this estimate says. And so again, thinking back to like, how's a unrepresented buyer going to think about this? Well, maybe they think, well, the appraiser is going to let me know. We'll get an appraisal. But again, you're wasting money on option, inspection, and appraisal.
Yeah, because the buyer has to pay for all of those.
Buyer pays for all those things. So if you make it all the way there and they say, we've got a $30,000 gap, and the seller's not willing to budge, well, you just lost out on like $2,000-$3,000.
Yep.
Because you didn't have somebody able to run those numbers for you appropriately up front. So value is
that's one of the first things that I do when we find a house. Make sure that it will comp and it's priced accurately.
Yep. And the last thing on showings is just scheduling the showings themselves. So this is more of a convenience thing, a time thing, a mental health kind of thing. But if I were an unrepresented buyer and I want to see 5 houses and I'm waiting on listing agents, there's just no way I'm going to get those back to back, or I'm going to be able to schedule like an evening of showings myself. You're going to have over 6 days or something where you can randomly squeeze it in.
Because you're at the mercy of the listing agent or the seller.
And so what's one thing that we do for our clients is we say, hey, I've got Saturday afternoon. Let's go see 7 houses. And I schedule them for you. I print off all the information for you. I make sure to bring numbers and make sure the homes are priced appropriately.
Well, not only that, like you have to map it out so you're in the right direction.
So you're not going here and then here and then here and then
you
here.
You have to figure out the traffic. How long is it going to take to get from A, B to C?
Yep.
And then how long are we going to need for our showing appointment? Because every buyer is different. Some buyers will take 10 minutes to walk through the house. Some will take 45 minutes to walk through the house. So kind of knowing, because every house has to be scheduled and there's a time frame. You have to get them scheduled. And so
especially if they're occupied, because the sellers will come back home.
Yeah.
If you miss your window, they're home with their kids and they're not letting you in.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, so there's definitely an art to it. So preparing those showings, making sure they're scheduled correctly, you show up on time, and then bringing all the information that you need to see that home and make a wise, informed decision. All right, number 5, new builds. I wanted to talk about new construction because I do feel like, thinking again from a buyer's perspective, unrepresented buyer, a lot of times I hear like, oh, well, it's a new build. I don't need anybody to represent me. It's a brand new house. Like, what could go wrong? And so my thoughts and encouragement is, whenever you're walking through that new build model home and they are wowing you with all the features, are you thinking to ask what upgrades are actually included in the base model of this home? Because they put all the bells and whistles in the model
of them
home, and they stage them beautifully, and they walk you through them. Again, back to the buyer's representative represents the builder. The builder's rep represents the builder.
Yep.
In every form and fashion, just as a listing agent represents the seller.
Yeah, and if you don't know to ask the questions, they're not going to come forth with the information.
They're not going to be like, hey, by the way, this upgrade right here actually isn't included in your model. Like, they're not going to just tell you that.
And so you can close and then realize, I have no blinds. So now I have to go spend thousands of dollars or hang up
blinds
or hang up like blankets over the window so you have some privacy.
Yeah, I've done that before at night. Garage door openers are not always included. Irrigation systems not always included. Landscaping is not always included. Your sod in the front and back is not always included.
If you have a bigger lot, like an acre lot, sometimes they only put grass to like a certain amount.
Fences are not always included. If you got pets and you show up on the first day and you can't let them out because there's no fence around your property, that stinks.
Yeah.
Refrigerators, washer and dryer, that's not included. I mean, there's ceiling fans, like the list goes on and on and on. So knowing what to ask and what to negotiate in for your client, because again, it's all negotiable. You could get those things when you move in if you have somebody that can negotiate them for you. But some of the things that I wrote down is what upgrades are included, what warranties are included, and fully knowing your warranties. Are third-party inspections allowed? Because some builders don't allow them. And my opinion would be run if that's the case.
Absolutely. That is a huge red flag.
You have to have you don't have to, but in my opinion, you have to have a third-party inspection.
You want an unbiased opinion.
I can't tell you how many times that I've seen people after they move in, they have a new build, and they've got like leaks inside the walls.
Have you ever been to a new build that did not need anything done?
No.
Never.
Because they're built by humans who make mistakes, and it's also not just the builder. They hire third-party contractors to come in and do these things. And so if they're not well supervised, things just fall through the cracks.
Yeah, I've had one when the inspector found that something was clogged, and when he was doing like the water test, the bathroom started backing up. And so if your buyer would have moved into that house, not had an inspection, they went to go take their first shower and water backed up out of the house. That's a big deal.
That's a big deal. I had one where they did not install an attic vent, like the roof vent. And so whenever that happens, the age of the roof, like the quality of the roof, deteriorates very quickly because there's no way for the attic to have proper ventilation. So it gets really, really hot in the summer and really, really cold in the winter. And the life expectancy of that roof goes down so quick when they don't have that. And they just missed it. And so things like that happen all the time.
Yeah.
Also, when should you inspect? Pre-slab, pre-drywall, after it's done, 9 months after you move in, like
if you're building from the ground up, all of the above. You should have like I think the inspectors do kind of like a 3.
There's a 3 or 4 point inspection where you can pay up front, and they do all of them just to make sure. But especially if you can get that pre-drywall, they can inspect all of the electrical and pipes and all the things without the walls there, so that's helpful. What's normally included, what's standard, can you negotiate on price, can you ask for upgrades, what about closing costs, the blue tape walkthrough, the new home orientation. Like, there's so many steps and things through this process where if you don't have somebody that knows what they're doing, you could very quickly and easily be led astray. And so if you have a client that's talking about new builds, I would put together some kind of document with all of those things and present it to them at that new buyer meeting on, here's the value that I bring you as an agent through this process, and just really be able to articulate it and line it out. I think the biggest thing is going to be like writing things down. Just like you have a listing presentation, having a buyer presentation, which leads us into... Join us next time as we dive into Amanda's systems and processes pertaining to the buyer meeting and how we can continue to bring value to our buyers. See you then.